Well, thanks everyone. Thanks for coming along. My name's Clay Hickling from GHD, but I'm actually more here in my role as a committee member for BrisBIM. So on behalf of the BrisBIM committee, I'd like to thank you for taking time out this afternoon and coming along to this session. So, BrisBIM do have our bi-monthly sessions, but this is sort of a bit of a one-off, and we have the luck of having some people over from Centre of Digital Built Britain here to speak today. But on behalf of the BrisBIM community, we'd like to welcome our speakers, which we'll introduce later. But on behalf of BrisBIM, we're happy to arrange this for yourselves today. So before I go too far, I might hand over to Professor Derek Carson just to do the acknowledgement of country from Bond University.
Okay.
Yeah, well, good afternoon, everyone. I think it is good afternoon now. I'm Derek Carson. I'm the Executive Dean of one of the faculties at Bond University and one of the senior managers. Before I start, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of the land in which we now meet here in Brisbane. That's the Turrbal people. As many of you may know, Bond University's main campus is down on the Gold Coast, and in the Gold Coast the traditional owners and custodians are the Kumameri people. And in acknowledging them, I pay my respects for elders past, present and emerging. Thanks for coming to our new shiny facility in Brisbane. As I've just alluded to, Bond University is primarily based down in the Gold Coast. The Gold Coast, it's always sunny. Every time I come to Brisbane, it's raining, and you think I would get used to that with my accent. I come from a country where we have quite a lot of water and so on. But apologies for the weather we have here today. When those of us in the senior management group were making a decision as to whether we should open a facility here in Brisbane, because we very much are aligned down to the Gold Coast, one of the reasons as to why we did it is that we wanted to ensure that we had a facility that made it easier for us to interact and to partner with industry. So I'm absolutely delighted that BrisBIM have chosen to come and have your workshop here today, because just looking at the badges on people's chests, I can see that we have now representatives from the construction industry, infrastructure, transport, medicine, I think corrections as well, and no doubt there will be others that I've not managed to see. We're absolutely delighted that you are here. Now, my background has got nothing to do with BIM. In fact, I'm probably the person who knows least about BIM in this entire room. I'm just a mere psychologist. So I'm going to stop talking because using the acronym BIM, I've exhausted my knowledge of the topic. And you're here today to hear from people who know an awful lot more about it than I. But before we hand over to BrisBIM for your workshop, I'd like to introduce Gary. My colleague Gary is our director here of the Brisbane facility, and he's going to give you a little bit of information about that. After Gary, we'll be handing over to Alan Patching, who does know quite a lot about BIM, and that's why he's going to speak to you longer than I will. But I wish you well today. Thanks very much for coming along, and hope you have a really productive workshop. Thank you.
Thank you, Derek. Well, as Derek said, my name is Gary Brady, Director of Bond in Brisbane. An official welcome to all of you. I've opened up everything on the floor today, so by all means, while you're here in the next few hours, take the opportunity to have a look around. Think of this facility in three ways. I guess the first one is that we have an executive wing, a function wing and a learning wing, is the best way to put it. The executive wing is full of, if you haven't been down there yet, boardrooms and meeting rooms, and we'd very much like to encourage you and your enterprises to come and use them. They are here for industry engagement, and particularly also the Centre for Enterprise Governance has moved here, and I'm a director of that. We very much want to encourage, if any of you sit on not-for-profit boards, for example, or any boards for that matter, to come and use this facility for meetings and committees, for example. So today we have other guests in each of those rooms using the space, and we very much encourage your companies to do the same. The second area is the seminar rooms at the back here, which is for learning. It's the part of the learning precinct, and they're very much available for executive education, micro-credentials, and the teaching of postgraduate programs here. So that leads to the third part, which is degree programs. We already have BIM here from last semester. The Master of Laws and Enterprise Governance starts this semester. We're only 2 weeks away from starting. So things are ramping up, which is really good. So we'd really encourage you to come and talk to us. If you see any spaces here today, and I think you'll have a BIM demonstration at some stage in the course of the afternoon, but as you wander around, have a look at the space and remember that we're here for you and we very much want to engage with industry. So if you think there is a need for that, I'll leave some business cards out on the registration desk as you came out of the lift. I'll also leave a sheet there that shows some of the upcoming micro-credentials and executive education that we have running here in the next few months as well. So by all means talk to us and we'd love to see you back in a different capacity as part of your own businesses, for example. So thank you, Alan. And if you're doing any fly-in, fly-out, there's a hotel just next door.
Thanks, Gary. Well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Add my welcome to everybody else's. I'll just have a few minutes. I was responsible for the grunt work on putting the BIM program here together, and basically most of the people who are responsible for it happening are in the room, not standing in front of you, sitting out there. I'm talking about people like Andrew, Brian McSweeney, many others. You know who you are, and thank you very much for the incredible effort you put in and those who continue to teach with us. Neil deGrasse Tyson's a very well-known academic from America. He's an astrophysicist. And he's got a great line. He said, there's so many people in the world who know enough to think they're right, but they don't know enough to know they're wrong. And it's such a clever statement when you think about it. If you don't believe it, just get on Facebook and look at some of the trolling for about 5 seconds and you're done, right? And I'm just wondering to what extent, with the exception of most brilliant people in this room, I have to say, genuinely, authentically, just how many people from the BIM world fit into that category. They know enough to think they know BIM, but they don't know enough to know they haven't got a clue about BIM. So I thought I'd do a bit of research before this. So I just rang random friends around the place who work in the construction and development industry, about 17. Odd number, all I had time for. And I just said, when I say BIM, tell me what it was. And then I asked a few more questions. Now, it's not going to come as a surprise. So what do you think people said when I said, what's BIM? Anyone? What do you think they would have said? Yeah, it's Revit in 3 dimensions. That's it. You know, it's taking AutoCAD one step up and doing it in 3 dimensions. And when you say, let's push it a lot further, what else do you think it is? Cost was the next one they mentioned, but they have no idea. When I started talking about data packages on architectural details and all this sort of stuff and being able to change stuff, they were just mind blown, hadn't heard of it. And when you start talking about environmental engineering and changing lights and knowing what the costs are and bringing in the facilities management people at the same time to look at the effect of that on operation, it was like, no, we're all going to lose our jobs. This is a horrible thing. They just don't know enough to know they're wrong. And I'm here to ask you to join me in subtly letting them know that they're wrong. And then we're going to provide the avenue that they can know enough to know they're wrong and then go on to be right. That's what we're really about. So the BIM education requirements at the moment, I think around Australia, and I think you'd agree in Queensland to a large extent, the requirements for it are miles ahead of the education provider's ability to satisfy those requirements. The only problem is the people who fit into the category of having the requirement to know more about BIM don't know it yet. So we're on an awareness campaign and we're asking your help in that regard. So I think the important thing is to know that when we put this together, we said we're going to research as academic people do. Let's go and see what all the other universities around the world have done. And the answer came up, not much. So we said, what can we do differently? So we started talking to people like Andrew. Brian was great help. Dave Mitchell and several others in this room and elsewhere. They said there's a couple of things you've got to stick with. Don't sit us in a room and give us a bunch of theory. Don't give us an exam 6 weeks after we've done the theory, we're going to forget it. And don't make it stuff that we can't use tomorrow in the office. We said, how do we achieve that? And they said, well, you need to get people from industry teaching. So we have 3D BIM, 4D BIM, 5D BIM, 6D BIM, 7D BIM, and we've got we don't call it 8D BIM, graphic information systems, all being taught by experts from industry are doing it every day at the cutting edge of industry. That's the people who teach you and your people and the people you influence to come to our courses. And that means a lot to the industry. If you want to give back to the industry, that's a good way to do it. Be the entry door to something special for them. Now, The second thing that I think was really important was no one's really looked at the big elephant in the room with BIM, and that was intellectual property rights. Everybody's working together on the same platform, engineers, architects. You're only going to need one blue, and the lawyers are going to be sitting back thank God we love this BIM stuff, right? I don't want to give any lawyer that pleasure, so we want to get it right. So we got a lawyer in to teach intellectual property rights. And if you're managing BIM processes, how to make sure that people's interests are protected, at the same time keeping information flow as open as it needs to be for an open BIM success. And the third thing they said is we do not want to be doing study outside of hours. So for the first time that I know of at this university, and probably any in Queensland, all of the assessment is done within the 3 days, and it's done practically. So what's important, that still means something that's like a normal university course for you guys, but the exams are slightly different. No, you told us more than that. And what you told us was no one wants to really come along and commit to a full university degree. Now, we have master's degrees, and I was talking before to Mark and to Alexandra, and we're saying most people they know around the world have little slivers within a degree, one subject, which frankly is nice. It's like telling people, if you want to teach them about the environment, say, look out, there's trees there, that's the end of your environmental lecture, which is just crazy. They need to have a lot more. So we took the risk to put a big program together. But it's based on 3 principles. One, giving industry what it wants, which is 8 micro-credentials, each of 3 days. You can commit to one of those if you want to, and come back in 2 years and do another, and then do 3 the next year. I don't recommend that, but that's what you can do because that's what you said you wanted. And then you can stack them all together when you've done the 8, and you can get a postgraduate certificate in BIM and IPD, Integrated Project Delivery. From that point, if you want to go to a postgraduate diploma, it goes back to normal education, but with a different content again, industry teachers, very practical content for 4 subjects. And if you want a master's, that's a 1-month placement, supervised placement in industry, not by us, by industry, to make sure you leave here ready to hit the ground running. And if you already work for an industry that's doing that level of work, then you're entitled to apply to have your internship to be done in your own workplace. We can talk about that. So we don't think we can make it any more industry relevant. We really don't. And I'm hoping that some of you in here will see that it's really, really important that we start educating and catching education up with requirements. What are those requirements? At the moment, any project in Queensland over 50 million is done by BIM. And I don't know whether I can quote Brian here without getting into trouble, but some time ago, I'll buy you a couple of extra beers if I'm in trouble here. Some time ago, he said, we're so short on people to do all this stuff in industry, we actually have to cut our projects down to be 49.5 million, so we don't have to use BIM. That tells you the state of the education of the industry. It's not good enough. Today is the start of the re-education by listening to 2 of the experts, world-renowned people who've done it at the cutting edge in an area, Europe, where they're just so far ahead of us in so many areas. We do well in some, but I was a judge on building smart international awards a couple of years ago, and I was just mind blown by the work happening in Europe. And speaking of judgment, we put our course together and we were given a special mention in 2020 at the International BIM Awards during COVID for leadership in BIM education. So international agencies recognise our university course as leading in the world, not just Australia, not just Queensland, the world. We're proud of that, and we want you to be proud of being part of it and promulgating it. Secondly, we run, because of the research we did, which was so focused on a mix of academia and industry, we won a distinguished award for the research we did and established this program. This is not a lightweight program. It's as good as they come. It's the best I know of. Bond doesn't deal with anything lower than the best in our subjects, in our material, in our lecturers, and in the people we invite to our programs on a day-by-day basis, in particular the speakers that Nathan has brought for us. Please help us out by spreading the word. And if you or any of your people would like to come, simply go to the Bond website and put in Bond plus BIM, or Bond plus micro-credentials will be the best way. And then you'll see right up front are the BIM micro-credentials. Click on them. Any questions, you can get in touch with me through Nathan, Andrew. I'll put you onto the right people or guide you around personally. And while you're here, I'm just going to finish with this point. I know this is going to be very disappointing to Alexandra and to Mark. Both being British, they're probably excited to see a bottle of gin on the table here instead of water, and it is afternoon. I hate to disappoint you, that's there. Rosemary's relative, who's our BIM coordinator now, makes the stuff in Western Australia from water from the hills that's purified and all the other things that gin people sell you. Anybody who goes to have a look at our BIM lab during the course of the day and leaves a business card before the end of the day will draw a card, and you get to get drunk tonight when you go home. Thank you very much for listening. I'd like to hand back to Clay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I was a little curious what the bottle of gin was up here for. I thought we'll have a Q&A later, and I thought, well, that'll fire things up a little bit. Anyway, so thank you for that. So just run a quick run through of the program this afternoon. Obviously here for the speakers. We'll have a bit of a Q&A later, facilitated by Nathan, and then we'll do some networking and finish off. From a housekeeping point of view, if you haven't noticed already, exits follow the little green running man as per normal, pretty straightforward. The toilets, if you need to, just go back through the lift foyer and across, and then you should be able to find the signage. Just a little bit of a promotion of BrisBIM. So we obviously were sort of knew that the Centre of Built Brisbane, we're coming out here. So a little bit about BrisBIM for those who haven't been to a BrisBIM. Maybe a quick show of hands. Anyone not been to a BrisBIM here in Brisbane? There you go. So we're just a group that meet every couple of months at QUT to sort of just talk and share presentations on just advancing and sharing the knowledge of BIM in the industry. So we get obviously industry speakers to come up and share their knowledge. So it's about networking and exchanging thoughts and ideas and just really trying to move things forward. A couple of statistics. So BrisBIM came out maybe over a bottle of gin, I'm not sure if it was, maybe a beer or two. It became the first city BIM event in Australia. Some 9 years ago we had that first beer. Since then we've had 49 events. These are all free, very similar to this, thanks to the sponsors for those throughout those 9 years. Just under 200 BIM presentations, over 7,000 registrations, and 2,000 unique attendees on our email list. And all of that couldn't be done without a great group that are the BrisBIM committee. Some are here today. So thank you to those people there. And again, just on behalf of BrisBIM, we're very happy to run this event. Other than just doing those sorts of BrisBIM events, we also sort of, where we can, stick our finger in, but had some input into the Australian New Zealand Guide for ISO 19650 with some feedback. Similarly, for the Queensland Government BIM Digital Enablement Policy, had some feedback in there, and that's where we sort of get the community of BrisBIM to try and provide that feedback. A plug for our next BrisBIM event, which happens to be next Wednesday. So come along next Wednesday to QUT. The QR code will send you to the registration there if you wish. If not, jump onto the BrisBIM website. Next event, obviously, in November. So I'd also just obviously acknowledge Bond University. Thank you for those words before. Thank you for this great venue. It gives much more options, and I've had a bit of a tour with one of your lecturers. So anyone who happens to sort of find a lecturer, see if you can get around. But it certainly sounds very interesting, that sort of as needed learning, which is a little bit easier to consume than that sort of 3 years, 1 year sort of session. But without further ado, I might hand over, if I can, to Andrew, who will now introduce the speakers, and we'll get on with the session. So thank you, Andrew, for doing this at relatively short notice.
Pleasure, Clay. Thank you. I think I should be able to. I'll put it down here. Look, thank you very much for the opportunity to particularly welcome Alexandra and Mark. It's been great this week to have them and their experience here in Brisbane, and thank you to Bond Uni for the opportunity to come together this afternoon. Just a bit about Alexandra and Mark. Alexandra is the former Executive Director for the Centre for Digital Built Britain. Now, this is where she founded, ran and grew this unique socio-technical change program, which was home to the UK's BIM policy, National Digital Twin, and global BIM programs. The Centre for Digital Built Britain brought industry, government and academia together, which I think is critical, but we'll certainly hear from them as well. It was important because it demonstrated how you can better use data and digital twins within the built and natural environments to make better decisions. And that's what we're all trying to do. We're all contributing to that, but we want to make better decisions. We also want to make them faster. We want to have more confidence in them. And we also want to get better outcomes for people on the planet. And that's what the Centre for Digital Britain achieves and has achieved and is leaving a tremendous legacy for the rest of us. Alexandra is the former Deputy Head of the National Digital Twin Program, which was an ambitious UK program to enable an ecosystem of connected digital twins across the built environment, and it was the founding home of the Digital Twin Hub. She is continuing to contribute to the national efforts in the UK's cyber-physical infrastructure, so an ongoing legacy, an ongoing contribution. Alexandra, as I've learned over the last couple of days, but I've also read it, is a keen champion of systems thinking. She believes that we can only solve the pressing issues of our time if we take a systems-based, holistic, socio-technical view, and you'll hear about that in her presentation. She is particularly interested in how the finance community, and also the insurance community can use connected digital twins to improve environmental, social and governance goals to help mitigate climate change. And this is something that's happening now. This is something that we all have to be dealing with, and we're very fortunate to have Alexandra here to run through that today. She's had a very varied career, having qualified as a chemical engineer and working in industry and in the cities around the world before rejoining the University of Cambridge in 2014. She is currently an independent consultant providing strategic advice on digital transformation, digital twins and organisational strategy. Mark Coates is Bentley's International Director of Public Policy and Advocacy, and he is an advocate, let me tell you. He's passionate and he brings a really informed position to all conversations. In that role, he helps to inform and guide government, policy makers and decision makers globally on the benefits of digital transformation. He's a former quantity surveyor, so for all those QSs who've become BIM enabled, you'll find a soulmate in Mark, with an extensive background in global project delivery. He first began working in the construction sector 33 years ago, so as you can see, he's got that wonderful beard, which has been remarked on at just about every session we've been to, but it shows he's got a complete understanding of the opportunities, but also the value, right, that digitisation can bring. He's worked with Thames Water, United Utilities, ICI, Highways England. He was involved in the 2012 Olympic Development Authority, and as well he's worked on Crossrail. So there's two opportunities I think that we need to discuss with him when we get to the Q&A session. What he's learnt from the Olympics in 2012 and what opportunities are presented for 2032, but also what he's learnt from Crossrail and what he can contribute for Queensland. So for the past 10 years, Mark's been working in digital transformation and has seen great advances made in sectors by adopting digital ways of working. He's worked on numerous infrastructure projects, consulting asset owners and their advisors on technology adoption to attain better project results and outcomes. He's conscious of time, cost and quality, and that's what we all are, In a capital constrained environment, we need to be conscious of those three elements. Mark's a member of the Chartered Institution of Highways and Transportation and recently served as the Vice Chairman and Chairman of British Water Forum for the past 2 years. Mark also serves on the Strategic Board of the UK's Digital Twin Hub and is a member of the Institute of Government and Public Policy's Advisory Board. Would you please make welcome Alexandra, who'll give us a presentation, and then Mark will join her for Q&A. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Good afternoon. I'm so excited to be here, and thank you for having us in your wonderful city. Neither Mark nor I had been here before. We will be back. We will be back as soon as we can manage to wangle a trip over here. You've got a beautiful city with some amazing possibilities coming up. I want to talk about how we can be better ancestors, how we can use data and digital twins to create the future that we want. CDBB was set up as a partnership between our government, our Department of Business, Industrial Strategy and Energy, BEIS, and the University of Cambridge, but it is most definitely not an academic institution. It brings together academia, policymakers and industry to all work together on creating that future that we want through digital transformation. We were very clear that we are technology agnostic. It's not about one firm, one university, one government department. We all need to work together to make this happen. We put together a vision for the built environment. We brought together 75 industry leaders from about 45 different institutions, all sorts of institutions, and we asked them to think about what is your vision for the built environment? Not what will the future be, because that's fairly unpredictable. We can have some boundaries of certainty, but that wasn't what we were asking them. Don't think about your road or your building, which is what we've historically done. We've thought about what do we want this building to do? Think about what do you want the built environment to do? And this is what they came up with. We need a built environment that has the explicit purpose of enabling people and the planet to flourish together for generations. Sounds super easy, but really difficult to do. But what that means is every time you think about renovating something, building something, that's got to be what you're trying to do. That's got to be the outcome that you want. We have to shift our focus away from creating more, building more, to the outcomes we want to generate. So don't think about building a hospital, thinking about the healthcare outcomes that we want to create for the community. They also noticed that the built environment isn't a set of siloed assets. It's a very complex systems of systems working dependently, I should say. They noticed that improving outcomes will depend on the services that flow through the built environment. It's not just about the physical bricks and mortar or wood or tarmac that you have. It's about what can you do with it, what services are delivered, and those are the things that are going to create the outcomes that we want for people and the planet. Why did we get to think about it now? Well, if you look at the timeline for the built environment, you've got multiple scales. I don't know about you, but my phone is asking me to update my apps. It seems like every 5 minutes, but certainly every couple of days, very short term. Our mechanical components, our pumps, our lifts, they last for several decades. We've got buildings and sewerage systems and roads that were created a few centuries ago, so they last on sort of hundreds of years timescales. But yet we've got infrastructure corridors that were created by the Romans, so some of our built environment lasts for millennia. So the choices that we make now will last for generations. So we need to make those right choices. Why? Because if you look at the number of people on the planet that have lived before us, it's about 100 billion. And there are about 8 billion of us on the planet at the moment. But if you look at those people who are going to come after us in the next 50,000 years, 6.7 trillion. We're their ancestors. We have to make the right choices for them. Otherwise, they won't have a future. We need to make better decisions to create those better outcomes. It's about using data to make the right choices. Data, information management, and a digital system of systems. But it won't happen by accident. We need to be purposeful and intentional to make sure that we can create those outcomes that we want. The built environment, as I said, it's not just about a series of non-connected physical assets. We need to think about our economic infrastructure, our transport systems, our factories, our energy systems, our water plants. We need to think about our social infrastructure, our schools, our universities, our hospitals, the places in which we live and play. And we need to think about our natural environment, not just within cities, but our agricultural environment and the wild environments beyond that. All that, when you put it together, that is your built environment. And when we think about the built environment, we need not to just think about construction. This design, planning, commissioning, decommissioning, it's a tiny part of the life cycle of an asset. Most of the financial gains and the environmental gains will be in the use, in the O&M stage. So we must always think about that when we're doing our planning, because that's the majority of the resource is spent in that phase. I've spoken about the services, how the built and natural environment come together through services to create the outcomes that you want, the ESG goals, either from the UN or others that we can add in. How do we want to change our society? We need to think about enabling those services for those outcomes. That's the physical built environment, but every single piece of that built environment creates data, whether it's us walking through it with our mobile phones, whether it's sensors, whether it's satellite images. That creates data that can be loaded up into a cyber world. We can run models, we can look at simulations, we can run algorithms to give us insights into that data and to allow us to make decisions on what we want to do for the outcomes that we want. And then we put an intervention, an action back into the physical world, the real world. This data up, intervention back is a cyber-physical system, and that's what the built environment is. It's the digital and the physical together. We know that it's not just about what we're going to build. We know that about 99.5% of the infrastructure that we will have this time next year, already out there, we can see it. Only about 0.5% per year is built, so we need to look at what's there already when we're looking at the system of systems. I think in the room you probably know more about BIM than I do, so I'm not going to spend very long on this slide. But BIM is a fantastic process for us to get data, to manage data. It's one of the sources of data for a digital twin. It helps us deliver efficiencies and savings, and that's why the UK government put the BIM mandate in place in 2016. This is what we call a digital built Britain or a digital built Australia. We need to think about data before we pick up our mouse, before we pick up our pen. What data do we need? Who needs it? In what format? How can we share it? Right at the beginning, how do we make it secure? And what do we need through the whole lifetime of the asset? Not just the build, not just now, through the whole life through to decommissioning. Then we get to build it. Oh, no, we don't. Then we get to build it, which is pretty cool. We need to make sure that the right person has the data just before they need it, that they've got the data that they need and not any extra data. By sharing data, by working together across the whole supply chain, we can deliver construction projects more safely with better quality and higher performance. Historically, we've been pretty good globally in doing that. Then we stack all the information together, either in books, as we did in the olden days, or on USB sticks and drives, put the keys on top, hand it over to whoever's going to operate, live in, use that building. That's just not good enough anymore. We need to make sure that the operators of the asset can access all the data from the design and build phase. They can see how it's changed as we've gone from as designed to as built, and they can use that to make the decisions about how they're going to run their building. But that again is not enough either. We need to be pulling in data from the building as it's being used. So how are people feeling in the building? What are the temperature like? What's the energy use? What's happening with my lift? Do I need it to get it maintained now? This predictive maintenance, this active management of the building is all enabled by good data and good decision making. And then we need to integrate, and this has two parts for me. We need to make sure that that particular asset, the building, the road, the train system, works with its surrounding, with the other pieces of the built environment with which it interacts, so that data from that asset can be shared with the other assets around it, and that it gains data so it can run itself better. But it's more than that, just that. It's about making sure that that asset and that group of assets work for the people, work for the citizens who live, work and play around that area, making sure that their quality of life is better and making sure that we protect our planet as we do that. I showed this slide to another group of practitioners this morning and they were smiling very wryly at me. This is all we need to do, she says, to get it right. You need to get the right data at the right time in the right hands, and that data needs to be right. Really easy for me to say, I can see from your faces, damn difficult to do. Let's talk about the data pyramid. I'm sure all of you have seen something similar. We've got our data soup, if you like, at the bottom, below the pyramid. All sorts of things collecting data. We put that up into the data management stage. And you can see from here there are all sorts of sources. There are things like our Transport for London, our Ordnance Survey, but also Amazon and Google. So we're talking public and private and very commercial data in this management stage. We need to make sure it's clean. We need to make sure that it's good enough. It doesn't have to be perfect in a lot of cases. And then we need to send it up to the next level, sense making. How do we make sense of this? For example, you would see financial models or predictive models on how an asset's going to behave. And then we need to use that sense making to make decisions, to improve the ESG outcomes, to report on the carbon, to maximise performance and improve future investments. And each stage of this data pyramid, what you learn from doing it, pass it down to the stages below. So the next time you do it, you manage your data better, you make sense of it more quickly, you can make even better decisions. going to talk a little bit about digital twins. And there isn't one size of digital twins fitting all. There are many digital twins for many purposes. They can be exceptionally complex or really, really simple. But all of them are about delivering value through better decisions more quickly. So you have your physical asset, putting data up into the digital, interventions back. Your physical asset actually doesn't have to be something that you can touch. It could be an asset, obviously, but it can also be a process or a system. So if you think about the financial models that are run, there isn't anything physical to touch, yet it's a digital twin. On the digital side, you've got data, you've got models, you've got visualizations. And I want to be clear that you don't have to have a visualization to be a digital twin. It's a really useful tool for engagement, for allowing people to understand what it is that you're doing or thinking of doing, but it's not necessary. It doesn't have to be there. But this bit is, your digital twin has to be driven by purpose. So it needs to deliver value and be driven by purpose. You need to know why you're doing it. And we have individual twins within the built environment. Here, I've just seen the most amazing work that Cross River Rail are doing. It actually is a world-leading project. I hope you guys realise quite how lucky you are to have it going on in your city. It's awesome. You've got a train carriage. It's collecting data, whether that is the temperature of your carriage or the condition of the wheels underneath. That data is going up into the digital, where we can analyse it to gain insights and decisions and intervene back. That could be quite simply just turning on the aircon because it's got a bit hot and stuffy in there. That's cool. So we've got the digital twin of the train carriage, but there's also a digital twin of the signalling system of the tracks and the stations. How much better if we actually link those all together for data so that we can make decisions? We're sharing data between those individual assets. So for example, if there's a problem down the track because the rails are buckled due to the heat, the train knows that well before it's getting to that piece of track and can adjust accordingly, either by alerting the driver or automatically, depending on what's appropriate. But let's not stop just at the train system. Let's link all our transport systems, aviation and road. In the UK, we've had a lot of rail strikes this year, and it's put tremendous pressure on our road system. How much better would it have been if we could have foreseen that? We could have seen where the pinch points were starting to occur, and we could have mitigated the worst of the problems. We didn't have a connected digital twin to do that, but had we, it would have been far less disruptive. But it's not just about transport. Let's link it in with the energy system, with the water system. So when you've got floods, you know what's going to be affected. When you've got a big power draw, you know what's going to happen with your EV charging. This ecosystem of connected digital twins is what we would call a national digital twin, a global digital twin, or a regional digital twin. Let's take another look at the same thing. You've got your physical built environment that I've spoken about before, and you've got your cyber environment. And you can see here's a single digital twin with data going up and interventions going back down. But that's with one asset. There are lots of other assets that could have digital twins here, all putting data up into the cyber, gaining interventions back down to that physical world. They're not connected in this model, but when we start to connect them, we can make much, much better decisions. For example, we connect our healthcare system and our transport system. We can make sure that our transport system is there to take patients to and from their appointments as they need it. There's been a fair bit of work done on the financial opportunity for digital twins. And I apologise that these are UK figures, but that was our remit, so it's what we've got. It's about 11 billion Aussie dollars, 7 billion UK pounds per year of benefits for the UK infrastructure sectors through greater data sharing. And the market for digital twins globally is just below 50 billion US dollars. That's a heck of an investment incentive. But let's look at a few more. This graph shows the cost of overspend by sector. All those blue and green lines at the top, that's a lot. If we could start saving that by making the decisions, by seeing what was coming down the pipe, as it were, we can cut that right back. That's a huge incentive. Here's another one, a paper that Mark wrote quite recently around using data for long-lasting change. When we've run one project, we'd imagine to see margins between 3 and 5%. But when we use the insights that we gain from that for subsequent projects, and we start managing the data from those projects and helping with the insights, you're putting an additional 5 to 8% on top of that. again, another great incentive for using good information management and digital twins. We asked KPMG to take a look at the value of information management. We wanted somebody independent to have a look and see what they could see. They were focusing on BIM and a little bit beyond, so not even digital twins and connected digital twins yet, because there isn't the depth of case studies to get a really strong, academically secure result. But they showed that having this strong information management gives us increased productivity for the organisations in the sector and sees growth across the whole economy. But the really cool bit for me is it's not just about that finance, it delivers extra value to customers, society and the environment. And we need to make sure that our information management is about just that. It's about people, profit and the planet. KPMG did some real work on how much, let's quantify that. They reckon for every £1 invested in IM in the UK, there's about £15 worth of savings generated. And that for every £1 of productivity gain, over 30 years, it's going to lead to about £3.70 of GDP increase. That's another heck of a reason for investing. It's a great ROI. In April this year, Mark and I, along with a colleague, Peter El-Haj, published this paper on finance and digital twins, and I'm sure we'll talk more about it in the Q&A. I think the summary is that financial world is using digital twins. They already are. They're demanding digital twins in infrastructure. They're using it to de-risk and add certainty to their investment. They're using it so that they can buy and sell infrastructure investments more quickly with a really good knowledge of what's in there. They're starting to demand it at the credit interview stage so that you won't even get your funding, you won't even have that conversation unless you've got digital embedded in your program. But there's a benefit for us infrastructure owners too as well, because giving that certainty to the banks allows them to give us reduction in premiums for insurance and better loan rates. In this particular paper, we had takeaways for the infrastructure community. And it's the first time actually I think anybody has said the finance sector can be the driver for the adoption of digital twins. We know it's a great tool, we know it helps us in construction, but actually having the finance community demand it is going to drive adoption in areas where it hasn't particularly been picked up. We've seen that it will reduce the cost of insurance and funding, and that data itself is very valuable, but even more so if it's open and shared. And the big thing which we've discovered in everything we've done in CDBB is that collaboration is absolutely essential across organisational and sectoral boundaries. It isn't just about the built environment anymore. The data links us all and we need to collaborate. CDBB was a 5-year funded programme. It wrapped up at the end of March. So we put together everything we've learned in 3 short papers, the Gemini papers. And this is what we discovered. It's got to be outcome focused. I've spoken about our vision. For us, absolutely that outcome is enabling people and the planet to flourish together for generations. It's got to be purpose driven. In this particular example, we're looking at climate resilience in the east of England. It's got to be systems based. I'm sorry, it's a super whirly diagram, but we need to realise that it's systems of systems and all connected, and we need to look at it in that holistic sense, or we won't get the correct decisions. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this. It's got to be values guided. And in 2018, CDBB wrote the Gemini Principles, where there are 3 clear things that any information management system has to do. It's got to have a purpose. And that purpose is for the public good in perpetuity. That doesn't mean that you can't have very strong commercial drivers and good commercial outcomes, but you need to have the public good there. It's got to create value for people, profit, and the planet. It's got to provide us with insights, otherwise we're just collecting a load of data for no real use. Has to be trustworthy, and that means it's got to be secure. And I remember I talked about making sure it was secure right at the start, and we need to do that at every stage of the asset life cycle. But it's also got to be as open as possible and have data of appropriate quality. There's a huge tension between those 3 things, because if you have something that's really secure, it's locked down, it tends not to be open. And often very open things are not secure. So we need to think about what's appropriate in each individual case. Again, it's not a one-size-fits-all. And it's got to function. It's absolutely got to work and work really well. This federated model where you've got ecosystems of connected digital twins is how we think it will work. And it must be curated. We've got to have clear ownership, governance and regulation. we also have to have exceptional visionary leadership, and I'll talk a little more about that. And it needs to evolve. I've been in CDBB for 5 years. The pace of change and what I've seen change in those 5 years is amazing. I know by the time you guys are delivering the Olympics, I can't even imagine what sort of tech we're going to be dealing with. So we need to make sure that everything we set up now is able to handle whatever evolution in technology and social that we get to. And here's the bit as a techie engineer that you might not think I would be saying. We've got the technical, we've spoken about that, but it is not just a technical program. The bit that's super difficult is often the socio piece. We need to make sure that we've got the legals, the privacy, the ways of working, the training, the upskilling. All these things have to happen for us to be able to use connected digital twins. So actually, the whole thing is a socio-technical change program. Here's the roadmap that we put together, and it's a change roadmap. It's what we did over the 5 years with a theory of change behind it. It's vital that we look at all of this stuff in a socio-technical context. And it also needs to be community enabled. We need to make sure that we've got bottom up, so we know what's happening on the ground, how things are working for people who are out there day to day doing this work. But we also need to make sure that it's top down, so the visionary leadership is able to collaborate across the whole space. We think you need to collaborate on the rules, work together so that you can work out what rules you need to have the fundamental sharing of data, and then absolutely compete on the game. That's where the commercial bit comes in. Here are a load of useful resources which may or may not come in handy. They're all on the CDB website. I'd be really pleased for you to download them, share them. They're all free. They're all free of copyright. Mark and I would be really happy to talk more about it, probably for longer than you would want to listen, actually, because it's our pet topic. But we put our emails up here. Absolutely contact us if there's anything we can do to help, any questions you would like to ask, any contacts you want in the UK, just drop us a line. We're seeing awesome things happening here, and we know that it's only by collaborating that we will move these things on. So let's make those links and make it happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. That was great. So get your questions in your minds and start thinking through them. I'll bring Nathan up, and Mark, if you'd like to come up to the stage.
Do you want that? Okay. All right, we'll just put that down so everyone can see everyone. Does anyone have any pressing questions? All right, I'm going to make a start then. I've got a whole list here, so we could be here all night. But I guess one of the things that we've faced here in Australia, which is significantly different to the approach in the UK, is that it's been a national response to the way in which BIM is handled. You have national education, you have national, all of your agencies are all at a national level, whereas in Australia, you'll experience over the next couple of weeks, you've got agencies from all different states, all approaching things differently. Now, in an ideal world, they're talking about doing it similar or the same. But what have been the benefits of having that centralised approach or at a national level compared to, I'd say, the disparate approach that we have here in Australia?
So I think it's all about the leadership. We were really lucky in having CDBB because it was that umbrella that went across everything. And we do have, not like you do here, but we do have some regional. So for example, Transport for London is just for London. So bringing that umbrella across everything to connect, coordinate and convene, that boundary spanning visionary leadership, pulling it all together, because we can't each do it on our own. In CDBB, we were a team of about 25 core staff, about 100 officially involved in the programme, but literally thousands of people helping, supporting, bringing ideas, bringing data, telling us what was happening on their projects in that wider world. So you need that open arm leadership to bring that whole world together. And it needs not just to be on a national level, we need to do it globally as well.
Yeah, it's like herding cats here in Australia.
That's exactly what it's like.
But let's take a step back from that as well. The UK government saw that benefit. and I'm assuming it would be millions of dollars that they invested at a national level in the CDBB to actually make that happen. Now, we don't have enough government people here today to try and influence that and change that, but our role that we've played here at BrisBIM over the last 9 years has been trying to encourage government and other industry bodies as well, have been trying to encourage government to try and approach things more centrally. Even the Queensland government won't invest enough money in its own programs to actually help push this forward. So despite seeing where we were back in 2010, I could say right now, and I'm going to be a bit rude, Australia was leading the way and Queensland was leading the way with the work that Tom Fussell was doing here through Project Services, and the several people from Project Services are here today that was seeing that work, and a change of government completely changed everything that we have here today. But the next challenge we face here in Australia now is, so you guys are doing 40 presentations over the next couple of weeks now. I hope you guys have like some Barocca. Do you have Barocca in the UK?
We do.
To keep yourselves up and going. But the problem is that a few of the attendees we'd hoped to turn up today haven't made it. But for those that don't have a strong understanding of all of this, I don't want them to get excited about digital twins. Because the biggest problem that we face here in Australia is a lot of people get excited from these events and then want to leap to that straight away. Yep. What are the lessons that you've learnt in the UK about the benefits of actually having this staged rollout implementation since, obviously there's a lot of lessons learned pre-BS 1192, but what would you suggest is the benefits of people in the room here actually taking a stepped approach to this rather than saying tomorrow when they go back in the office, I want a digital twin, please?
So I want them to do both. I want them to say, we've got BIM here and now, it works, let's use it. I want there to be support for adoption of BIM. And CDBB, I've talked about our digital twin program, but CDBB had a very strong BIM program, UK BIM and international BIM, because adoption of BIM, it's one of those things that will pull in data for digital twins. We need BIM to make the digital twin one. But at the same time, industry is off doing digital twins. So if we don't coordinate that, it will go off in different directions. So we need to do both. We need to make sure that we've got the foundations laid, that they're really solid, that they work, and that they keep on working. And we need to be visionary for the future.
Now, before I keep going and hijack this whole Q&A, any questions yet? Yes, Brian.
Thank you. So I guess part of that component is, and I don't know if I saw enough in your presentation, is about bringing people on that journey of change management,
yep,
while also trying to allay fears about what we're trying to do with BIM implementation isn't a real significant change. It's a move away in some instances from manual processes and other things more into a digital process. But what have you seen about how to, I guess, influence change management within organisations to bring them on the journey?
So there's a whole paper on theory of change, which I'd love to send to you. But Mark, do you want to tackle that one?
Yeah, I was going to say...
Nathan, can I have you repeat the question for the video?
I've forgotten Brian's question. I was having a second to breathe. But
so let's put it in the context of change management and what you're seeing.
So in terms of my lovely video recording that we're doing today, it is a big issue. We got the processes, we have the technology slowly creeping along. Well, it's not slowly, but it's moving along. How do we bring people?
Well, adoption. That's the thing. Is how. I mean, I've worked on a couple of projects where the bead may give it away. I started off with a Nokia 6210, so that was the advancement. And on the Crossroad project, what they did there, they had a system called Innovate 18. So every contractor was requested, I think is the polite way, to put a money of investment in, and for every pound they put in, it was matched by £2 by the client. So that went out as a number of packages, predominantly to SMEs to drive adoption. And by the way, beginning of this project, the iPhone hadn't been invented. So that gives you the idea. It was very manual, but it was around health and safety, because that was the issue, and around productivity. And basically what we were doing is getting the buy-in from the contractor, because they'd had financial investment, so they wanted to see the return. We were able to show them productivity. So we picked a simple thing like working at height and having the scaffolding signed off. Instead of doing the traditional way of paper, filled out, back to the site office, signed, boom, 2 hours were lost before actually the work was done. It was done on a mobile tablet, actually done, synced, and away they go. And we worked out we were saving 90 minutes per person, per site manager, per activity. So when the contractors got that, what was really nice to see is they then wanted to take the technology outside of Crossrail because they were seeing the value, because it was adding an additional money margin, not only to the main contractor, but to the subbies. They were on site for less, they had less risk. So you can find incentive ways through good, strong leadership that government does need to lead it. I'm going to be one of those people and put my head right in the lion's mouth and say, you need a strong leader at governmental level driving your knowledge. Comms is the best thing. And soft comms, I produced a number of academic papers, but what I've been asked to do afterwards is bring them down to bite size, really easy, manageable pieces of, and the real collaboration there is kicked in. So yeah, I would say you need it, but you still, if you don't have it, you have the ability to influence and drive adoption through your projects and through incentives. And I won't dive down the rabbit hole yet of investment because that's my favourite topic. I'll save it for you. But work with your banks and work with your insurance companies. I've got great examples if you want to hear them, how you, the client, can save money by doing more, which means you end up doing less, but get a safer project and a better return.
Derek, you have a question?
Yeah, Alexander, thanks so much for your presentation. As I said, I'm personally really pleased about it and so on. I feel much more educated. But it seems to me that what you're proposing is wonderful, it's hugely inspiring, but it's not about organisational change or even sector change, it's societal. It's everybody working in partnership and so on. And I absolutely agree with you that data is the key to proper decision making and so on. But data has been commercialised hugely and so on. And if you've got public working or public, in order for you, what you're proposing to work together, it's the public and the private and so on. But given that the data is so commercialised, how's that? That's a barrier to us being able to achieve this, and how can we get over that thing that there are people making a lot of money out of data, and to the extent to which they can make that freely available to be used for the common good.
So it's not about giving all your data over, it's about giving some of your data over. One of the highways companies in England did some work on the value of their company, and they found that their data was worth about 50% of their physical assets, so about a third of their value was around their intangibles. But they also recognised, and they're one of the firms that's working on these projects with us to share data, that it becomes much more valuable to them by sharing it, because they get the quid pro quo back. They can make much, much better decisions. So they're seeing it as an asset on their balance sheet, yes, but also an asset that allows them to gain better insights from a wider community of data owners, if you like. And to be clear, the data's always yours. You are the owner of that data. You can allow other people to see it, and you're in control of that. But you're right, there are some firms founded on data. On your piece about changing the way society works, I think it's already changing. If you look at, how do I phrase this? If you look at people in school at the moment, you give them Minecraft, they know how to use it. They know how to build collaboratively in teams, working in a way that we never worked when we were at school. We were very much siloed. So the whole ways of working, the whole idea about how society works is already changing. We've got the potential of the metaverse out there. Actually, the reality of the metaverse out there is just not everybody can access it. So we can either choose to actively be involved in this and move with it, or step away from it, and then others will do that work. So my view is I would rather be involved in trying to shape it into something that I feel is where I would want to be in the future, rather than leave it to others who might not quite have the same opinions.
I think as well also, I won't drum on about the leadership, but it's the experience. The younger generation are becoming much more tech savvy, but more experience. They know what is to be placed in a safe place and what is not to be placed in the common. And there's the wording, and again, it goes back to that communication. We don't use the phrase common data environment, because common means it's open and can be shared. We use connected data environment. Therefore, it's connected to something, its own security, its protocols. And the big thing as well is, don't try and collect everything. You collect everything, you've got cost issues, carbon issues, you then end up with far too much data that it actually becomes useful. Actually think about the outcomes. What are you collecting it? Why are you collecting it? And who you're collecting it for. So then what you actually collect, you're not sharing 100% with everybody. You may be sharing parcels and packets with certain individuals that they found useful. That's system of systems approach that we talk about. And there's been great papers I've worked on for the ICE about a systems approach, about delivering the right packet to the right person.
Yeah, Don.
Thanks, Nathan. Thank you, Alexandra, for a great presentation. I just wondered if you might share with us what the key factors you believe would contribute to the success of the Centre for Digital Britain, with a view that, how might we replicate that success in Australia?
I think it just comes down to one word: collaboration. It's having that very open mind as to who one can collaborate with as many people as possible. We at the beginning had a meeting where we brought about a couple of dozen people in the room, knowing that we had people with absolutely opposing views and not knowing quite how that was going to go. They were quite feisty people. But it was really necessary to get them in the room, to have discussions, to be open, to not shy away from those difficult conversations or those different, really different opinions, but to talk about them and find a way to collaborate. Because there's almost always common ground, and there's almost always a will to talk about what are the outcomes that you want. And when you've got people working towards a common goal, they find a way around those differences. So collaboration.
As an outsider looking in, and I will embarrass Alexandra on this, it was people like Alexandra and Mark Enzer from MOTS who brought us all together. We had regular meetings, but what that actually resulted in was a number of us going back out into industry, talking about it, but using the same vocabulary, using the same wording, the same mindset. So to use your herding of cats, we weren't all set off in different directions. We were actually on the same, if not the same rail line, but we were on the rail line going the same direction. So by bringing those people, that voice together really worked.
Moving and staying on the data side of things, I attended a presentation in Slovenia in 2018. There's this one statement that was made from one of the keynote presentations that stuck with me, and it stuck with me to this day still, is that the sooner that all of us in the room realise that we're actually in the real estate game, that we will actually finally understand what we're actually doing. Now, in the UK, Alexandra, you talked about a company recognising that they had value in their physical asset, but also 50% value in their information assets. In the UK, are banks understanding it? Are finance companies understanding it? Is there a point where they are starting to actually understand it, so that this transition and change can start to occur, where governments start to go, actually, not just being interested in the capital expenditure, but actually then recognising there's financial benefits in the future past the terms of these politicians being on stage?
So yeah, they're absolutely understanding it in the UK, but they're understanding it here too. So our first meeting here was with QIC, and they're seeing the pension funds demanding digital, actually writing it in at that, before the deal's done, writing in, you have to have a digital action plan, as it were, before we'll invest. So that's great. So they're going to be driving the uptake of digital, and it's happening in the UK as well.
Do you want me to dive down
Yes,
that
please.
rabbit hole? Okay, if the bar was open, I'd say get a drink and let's talk. The paper that we did, this is where it gets really, really interesting, about being able to drive without government involvement. None of our projects would ever happen without funds. It's as simple as that. At the moment, the governments are borrowing and looking at, but the real holders of the money are the pension organisations, and looking at, and normally they'd be investing in vertical buildings. Vertical buildings, we're not going back to work, are not looking as strong and secure for long-term investment. So we're getting a lot of investment into infrastructure work, which is different. The average investment in a vertical building is 3 to 5 years. Their legacy is usually 60. You've got an infrastructure project, the average legacy is 125 plus years. So it's a different model, but similar. So when we did the paper, we actually set a goal of interviewing 20 banks. I ended up interviewing 35 plus, and we were being approached by them. So as Alexandra said, anything over 250 million, if you go for your credit interview, they want to see a digital strategy, and they want to see where you're going. There's a particular project mentioned that I worked pre-Bentley on, where a company borrowed 450 million from 4 banks. The LIBOR or base rate was 0.5 and their interest rate was 0.9 on top of that. We negotiated a 0.25% reduction down if they produced what was now terminology golden thread or golden loop, because it reduced the risk for the bank. And also around ESG reporting, they had the data that they needed to report on their loans. So now if you work with your, and by the way, the developer then ran down the street to the insurance company and said, I've got all this information, what do I get as a reduction? So you work with those individuals, you can drive. So if you have the finance to deliver a project, you'll then got a delivery partner who's going to deliver it and manage it for a number of years. Work with the insurance company and what information you need, they need, that contractor will have to, or that delivery partner stroke management team will need to provide that for the 25 or 50 years they're maintaining. So when the asset is returned to you, you've got a good, solid model that's got rich data that you need, and it's not the old-fashioned binder PDF stroke memory stick that seems to be handed over. Those are your friends. Normally you would say finance and that is your enemy. This day and age, to drive innovation and drive that, go talk to your banking teams.
I think Andrew's cherry-picked the people that actually have interest in it in Brisbane. I hope that you pick up some more, but overall in Australia we're not seeing that engagement that you talked about. That you finally, it's good that QIC are interested in it. So it's a positive for us Queenslanders.
Well, it was the pension company had come to them and asked them about it. So they're
starting to learn.
It was the finance approaching them, educating them. So that was the positive.
So we've got a number of different people across different sectors here today, from the client side through to delivery. Since the mandate in 2016, there's a lot of learning. There's a lot of learning that goes on. Here in Australia, the learning, as you would have heard in the introduction from Alan, it's not strong enoughly supported. There's not enough education set up to actually support and enable industry to actually become capable from the delivery and from the receiving side, from the client side. We're seeing a lot of clients incorrectly asking for things, going back to that whole thing of not knowing what they really should know. But it started with the mandate, it started with standards, Centre of Digital Built Britain. What other pieces of the puzzle were put in place? You know, we talked about change management. What other pieces of the puzzle regarding education were put in place to assist this transition for industry that Australia could learn from?
So helping people adopt BIM so that there is because, as you know, you end up with some people being BIM experts, others who don't even know what the name is, within the same industry. So having the UK BIM framework to aid adoption of what was the PAS 1192, now the ISO 19650, but it's got guidance, it's got essentially self-help there. Go there, have a look, use it. Now, it's free and open to use, it's based on the UK's view of that, but it's still available. I saw on the slides there's something similar for Australia and New Zealand.
Yeah, we won't talk about that today.
Well, get it to the stage where people come there, they use it, they can use it to pick up BIM. But the other great thing is the education piece, and I mean that in a really broad sense, the comms piece almost, telling people what are the outcomes, what can you do with it? Because at C-suite level, People don't want to hear, I've got this new IT project, because that's what you hear when we say BIM. It's not about a new IT project, it's about I can enable these outcomes that you want. And it's same at C-suite and high-level politics. You've got these things you need to do, you've got these challenges. I've got the tool that you absolutely need to make that happen. That's how you drive the adoption.
And here in Australia, communication hasn't really changed. It's still kind of in its infancy, despite how long we've been kind of trundling along. Are you finding that the language is changing? So it's actually people saying, you know, not actually put, like the number one thing I like to try and do in conversations is never put the word BIM in any conversation. When you're talking to someone, you sit down and have a conversation about, well, what are the problems that your business is currently facing? And you don't want to, until they actually put that forward, you don't put a solution forward. Now, Mark, in terms of software, because that's now kind of the side of the fence you're sitting on as well, how is software in place now to enable this to happen, enable all these things that we dream about to occur, or is it the near future or the far future? What's your kind of views on that side of it?
I mean, what I want to do is sort of stay completely agnostic on this. What I will suggest and have done with clients, and no giggling please from certain people, it's how you approach it, as you said, with a client. I'm of the age where I remember playing board games, and one of them was Trivial Pursuits. And if you can remember that container you got right at the beginning of the game, the cheese wedge, now every cheese that you collected was a different colour. So you take that cheese wedge and you start your adventure, your game, your project, your series of projects. Let's be really sensible about this. If you have an open source platform, an open source with security parameters, I will add, not just open source, you can go around that and collect pieces of software. You know, I've worked with clients who've been on Maximo for 30 years. You're not going to get them off Maximo overnight because of the investment. And it's not just investment in the data, it's the investment in the training, and people have been used to it. But by doing that sort of connection, you can actually bring the data in, you can enrich it with other sources of data from your different pieces of cheese, and then actually circulate up into, we're finding the more you actually make it, not visionary, but more pictorial, the greater engagement at all levels. Yeah. I mean, look at Uber. Let's get out of BIM, but let's look at Uber. It's a taxi service. You know, you used to ring up a taxi and go, "Can I have a taxi?" "Yeah, you'll be there at 5. And then 5:15, you'd be out the door. 5:20, you're on the phone, it's round the corner. All Uber have done is give you a graphical representation of where your taxi is, and therefore remove the stress. So you take your multiple sources of data, put it into one place and give a good graphical representation, you're going to get a greater engagement and a greater buy-in.
Now, I've run out of time, but I've got to put this one in anyway. Let's not say all digital twins, because I don't want to kind of put it into that package, but is the new branding of digital twins really just a fancy new interface to building management systems?
No. Building management systems are one of the sources of data, but we need to be collecting data from all sorts of other places and then holding it we would use the phrase information management framework, or the little pot for the wedges of the cheese, whatever you want to call it, and it needs to have the appropriate algorithms, simulations, models, so we can make that decision that we want to make for the outcomes that we want. So no.
Yeah, and again, it's that too often. I'll give you one example, and I'll give you a closing comment. I promise you, honestly, Your Honour. Too often, people, when they're looking at digital twins, look at including that in their build cost or that project cost, and it will cost X, and it may give only cost saving Y. But what they don't realise too often is the knowledge and the insight that gives will give Y plus Y saving on the next project. So instead of thinking it as that one cost for that one project, and the closing comment I'll give you is, you guys, both of us, are extremely jealous and envious of what you've got. Not only have you got a fantastic city, and the skyline yesterday presenting was unbelievable, but the opportunity you've got ahead, you know, with, I will embarrass Andrew, Cross River Rail project and what they've done, and that first building blocks, if we can stretch that out for when you come to do the Olympics in 10 years' time, not only are you going to be knowledge rich, data rich, but leadership rich. So in the following 20 or the 10 years after, the next 20 years, you guys are going to become a mecca for knowledge on delivering projects. Because I personally believe you, with the Cross River Rail project and the Olympics, will deliver the most connected series of projects over the next 10 years.
Fingers crossed we get it right.
All down to you. Your fault.
No, well, I'm not going to be blamed for that. I just stand here and talk with a microphone. I just shoot people with questions. But in terms of a closing elevator pitch, one from both of you, I think, in a sentence or a short paragraph, what does a digital twin mean to each of you? Alexander?
A digital twin is a vital tool for solving the challenges of our time.
I'll take it that sentence or paragraph was aimed at me.
Oh no, I normally do a bit of waffling as well.
I will say advancement of humanity.
No, I really like those. Alexandra and Mark, thank you very much for your time today. I'll hand back over to Clay to close this out.
All right, thank you very much for that. Thank you, Nathan, for organising that. Now, I understand I'm probably between you and some refreshments over there. So, just a final sort of wrap up. Again, thank you from the BrisBIM community and BrisBIM committee. Thank you very much for coming along. And I understand you've got a very busy agenda with these sessions around the countryside, but thank you very much for the time to come here to Bond University and to our BrisBIM audience. Thank you very much. Thank you again to Bond University for this great venue. Nice and shiny, so let's make use of it and use these the great facilities that we have here today. And again, if you bump into a sort of a lecturer or some of the staff from Bond University, just inquire about that course that they were talking about there. Yes, we've got to do something with this gin. And a bit of a plug for BrisBIM. If you can, next Wednesday at QUT is our next BrisBIM event. So thank you very much. Thank you very much. And what are we going to do with this gin? There was a lucky door prize or a card. Where do you want those cards to be placed?